Hello and welcome back to my channel. On this video, I'm going to talk about all the books that I plan to read in May. And typically what I do is I have 17 books that I put on my list. I'm trying to read 22 books a month for 2022. And then I have 5 books that I do an alphabet challenge where I pick a random letter and I choose 5 books from my Kindle that start with that letter. So I do that at the end of the video. But first, let me start with the 17 books that I added to my list for this month. And some of them I know very little about. I've just heard about them in various places and think that they would be interesting to dive into. So the first book on my list is the first in a series, and it's actually a book I've read before, but I want to revisit it because I'm going to read a couple other books in this series throughout this month. So the first book is called A Borrowing of Bones by Paula Munier, and this is a part of a series that's called The Mercy and Elvis Mysteries. And it's basically about a woman who comes back from being a soldier and her partner has been killed in conflict, and she brings back his dog. And this was a dog that was also trained to be in conflict zones. And she is now the owner of this dog, recovering from her partner being killed, and it gets drawn into a mystery. And the dog is a dog that's trained to sniff out various things like explosives and other kinds of things like human remains. And this is how she gets drawn into a mystery in her local community. And so I'm going to read the first in that series, and then I also picked up the next 2. The next one is called Blind Search. The third one is called The Hiding Place. And I don't know a ton about the plots of the books that are coming up. I tend to not read ahead in the series because I don't want to get any spoilers, but I'm looking forward to diving into those 3 books, which I picked up from my library this month. All right, the next book I have on my list is I was able to get the audio and a physical copy of The Well of Ascension, which is the second Mistborn novel. I read the first Mistborn novel and loved it. I thought it was really fun. Loved the world building. It really focuses on a world in which people have powers, and they get those powers from different kinds of metals. And at first I thought this would be very confusing, but it really wasn't. And I'm actually really excited to dive into book 2. Love that I have it on audio, that I can dive into that. That book is by Brandon Sanderson, and Mistborn was the first Brandon Sanderson that I had read, and excited to dive into a second book by him. I also picked up the second in a series by Nora Roberts called Of Blood and Bone. And this is a part of a series called Chronicles of the One. And I read the first book in this series earlier this year. It's basically about a kind of plague, and the plague brings out different forms of magic, both good and bad magic in people. And the first book ends, I don't want to give too much away, but basically the second book is happening many years after the first book. So you're starting to see some characters evolve over a longer period of time. And the second book is set in kind of this later time period. So I really enjoyed the first book, and I'm looking forward to the second one. I also picked up The Essex Serpent by Sarah Perry. And part of the reason I picked this up is because, as you may have seen in previous videos, I love reading a book that's been made into some kind of adaptation and then watching the adaptation. And this is one that I saw coming out that has Claire Danes as part of the adaptation. And the general idea of it is it does take place in the 19th century. It's inspired by true events. I believe it's about a woman who is kind of trying to find what is called the Essex Serpent, which I think is a version of like the Loch Ness Monster, maybe. Once again, I don't fully understand the plots of all of these books, but really looking forward to seeing where this goes. It's kind of a historical setting, sounds kind of like a mystery, if not like historical literary fiction. So looking forward to that. I also picked up The Gracier by Kim Leget, and this is one that I also was seeing people talk about on social media. I didn't know much about what it was about. It sounds like it's a little bit apocalyptic, which always kind of draws me in. It definitely has kind of a feminist lean to it, I think, as well, a little bit kind of like The Handmaid's Tale. But basically, this is about a setting in which girls are told that they have a certain kind of power that happens when they turn 16. And so they're banished in their 16th year for a year, and then they come back, but not everybody comes back. And so there's kind of a mystery element here. There's also, I think, elements of kind of women relationships between the girls and the women that they're kind of turning into So really looking forward to this, and it seems to have pretty good ratings on Goodreads, so we'll see what I think. I also picked up Inspection by Josh Mailerman, and this is the same person who wrote Bird Box and the recent sequel to it, Mallory, which I read this year. And I have just enjoyed Josh Mailerman's books, and so I thought I would pick this one up too. I don't know much about it. Synopsis says it's about a school deep in a forest far away from the rest of the world. There's 26 students. All of them think of the school's founder as their father. So this sounds a little bit maybe apocalyptic as well. We'll see. Students are being trained to be prodigies, and there's a student who kind of suspects that there's something more than the school and where he's at. So I always love a good mystery that has a bit of a component to it that's maybe paranormal, and it sounds like maybe this is something there. We'll see how it is. All right, next I picked up Orphan X. This is by Greg Andrew Hurwitz. I have heard about this series for a while, but have not had a chance to check it out. This is the first book in the series. I think I was able to pick up the second one on like audio on sale, and so this is what kind of alerted me to the series, that I was interested in what the second book was about, but wanted to go back and read the first book first. So this is, synopsis says, the Nowhere Man is a legendary figure spoken about only in whispers. It's said that when he's reached by the truly desperate and deserving, the Nowhere Man can and will do anything to protect and save them. But he is no legend. Evan Smoke is a man with skills, resources, and a personal mission to help those with nowhere else to turn. Also a man with a dangerous past. So it sounds like a thriller. I often go into reading these books without knowing much about them at all. So I'm trying to give you a bit more of a synopsis so you have a sense of what this might be about. But looking forward to picking up that one as well. I always love to start a new series and see what I think about it. I'm also picking up The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. This is a book that is set in 1977 and also in 2017. So it's one of those ones that I love where there's a cold case and a contemporary mystery. This is about an earlier set of mysteries. There's lady killer murders that are happening in the 1970s. Two men murdered with the same gun, same strange notes left behind. There's a suspect, but she's acquitted. She retreats to the isolation of her mansion. Then in Oregon, 2017, you have a receptionist who runs a true crime website called The Book of Cold Cases. This sounds so up my alley. And then of course you have this person who's fueled by the passion that she had when she escaped an attempted abduction as a child, and then she meets Beth by chance. So super excited about this one. Was able to get it on audio from my library and love a good thriller on audio. I also have the 7th Armand Gamage book by Louise Penny called A Trick of the Light on my list for this month. And I don't even know what the plot is for this book, but I've been loving this series so far. Let's see. It looks like there's somebody who is found dead, not surprising, in a mystery novel, found among the bleeding hearts and lilacs of Clara Morrow's garden in Three Pines, shattering the celebrations of Clara's solo show at the famed museum. Gamage is called to the tiny town where he finds the art world gathered and is trying to solve this mystery. So another one set in Three Pines, which I'm really looking forward to. This has been one of my probably favorite reads of the year, is this series. I'm loving going through it. And now I'm at the books. I had read a few of these before, and I'm starting to read all the books that were new to me, so super fun to dive into them. I also added to my list a book called This Might Hurt by Stephanie Roble. This was also one that I came across on Bookstagram that people were talking about, and I was able to get it on audio, so I'm excited to kind of dive into this one as well. This is from, looks like a USA Today bestselling and Edgar nominated author. And I have never read this author before. So this is a new author for me. It looks like it's about two sisters, one who's trapped in a cult, the other in a web of her own lies, and they are working out their relationship together. You have one sister, Natalie, who hasn't heard from her sister in more than half a year. And she is going after her sister to find out more about what happened to her when she was in this cult. So looking forward to this, and glad that I could get it on audio. All right, I have a couple of nonfiction books on my list as well. I picked up The Power of Moments, Why Certain Experiences Have Extraordinary Impact by Chip Heath. I've read other books by Chip Heath in the past. This is one that was recommended by someone who reads a lot of books that I often enjoy. We read a lot of things in common, so I decided to pick this one up. Also picked up a couple of books that are more for like my own development at work. The first one is Lead Yourself First, Inspiring Leadership Through Solitude by Raymond, Kethledge. I love to read about solitude and I love to read about leadership, and those two topics combined, right up my alley. So picked up that one, and also picked up a book called Alive at Work, The Neuroscience of Helping Your People Love What They Do by Daniel Cable. I'm in the process of building out a team at my work, and so I'm starting to read more books that are specifically related to leadership and management. So I added this to my list this month. 2 more left on my list of 17. First is one called The Bookshop of the Brokenhearted by Robert Hillman. This is one that I think was maybe re-released recently. I found a copy of it at my library in the new book section. It takes place in Australia, and I believe it is about a relationship between a man in like the 1960s and a woman who is a Holocaust survivor and who ends up in Australia. I don't know much about it, and I think I'm curious about the re-release because I'm wondering if this is a book that was released originally in Australia and has recently made its way to the US. And there are several Australian authors that I've really come to love, so looking forward to checking that one out. And then the last book on my list of 17 here for my original list for the month is, of course, The Shadow Rising, Wheel of Time Book 4 by Robert Jordan. This is a book that I was not able to finish last month. I ran out of time, and so I'm definitely devoting time to reading it this month in May. Really looking forward to this 4th installment of the Wheel of Time series, which basically follows a group of young people, one of whom has had kind of a prophecy about himself, and we're starting to see that kind of unfold over time. So really looking forward to The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan. So those are my group of 17. And now I am just going to pull up my Kindle app so that I can start to look at what other things might be in my library that I want to add to my list, and that are based on the alphabet letter that I choose randomly. So I'm gonna grab my letter here. And I have chosen a wild card letter. So now I wonder what I want to do with my wild card letter. And I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna pick the letter B and see what I come up with for books that start with the letter B that are in my Kindle that sound like something that I want to read. So let me take a moment here and see what I might be able to find that falls within this category. All right. There are definitely things here that I've read before, so I'm kind of skipping past the stuff that I've already read and seeing what might else be interesting here. Okay, so the first book I'm gonna pick is called Blacktop Wasteland by S.A. Cosby. This is a book that I've just heard a lot of positive things about. I think it is kind of a thriller from what I understand. This is a book that people just say you just turn the pages like very, very quickly. And I always love a book like that. So I'm gonna add that to my list. Let's see. I am also going to add, there are so many here. A lot of books about books, which is not surprising given that it's a B letter. I'm trying to get through all of these just so that I can see what all is here. All right, I'm definitely gonna add a book called Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle by Emily Nagoski. And I believe Amelia Nagoski as well. They might have written this together, or maybe one of them wrote a foreword for this book. This is a book that I've heard a ton about, but have never read and never picked up. So I'm gonna definitely pick up that one. I think that's gonna be a good fit here. I'm also gonna pick up a book called The Burning Girls by C.J. Tudor. This is one that I also don't know much about. So I'm just gonna look really quickly and see if I can figure out what is a quick synopsis of this book. Okay, so what quick synopsis is: a dark history lingers in Chapel Croft. 500 years ago, local Protestant martyrs were betrayed and then burned. 30 years ago, 2 teenage girls disappeared without a trace, and a few weeks ago, the vicar of the local parish hanged himself in the nave of the church. Reverend Jack Brooks, a single parent with a 14-year-old daughter and a heavy conscience, arrives in the village hoping for a fresh start. Instead, he finds a town rife with conspiracies and secrets. Sounds good to me. So I'm going to add that one to my list as well. So The Burning Girls. And all right, I got to pick up a couple more. I'm going to also pick up, this is one that I've had on my list for a while. It's called Broken Open, How Difficult Times Can Help Us Grow by Elizabeth Lesser. And this is one that I added to my list probably a while ago related to the pandemic, and looking forward to thinking about that. All right, let me see if I can find one more that's fiction. I see a few options here, but I want them to be... Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and add The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. Again, another book I've heard a ton about, but don't really know much about what it is. And let's see if I can find out anything about what this book is about. Looks like it is future setting, epic fantasy series about a young woman fighting to use her powers and stay alive in an England entirely different from our own. All right, I'm gonna add that to my list as well. So looks like I have 5 extra books added there. Let me just make sure I know which ones I'm doing. So I'm gonna add The Bone Season. I'm going to add, let's see, Broken Open, The Burning Girls, Burnout. What was my original one that I talked about here? Blacktop Wasteland. That'll be the last one that I add to my list. So I hope you'll tune back in the beginning of June to see what I was actually able to get through on this list of 22 books for this month. But I'm looking forward to all of them, and I hope to update you soon. Thanks for watching.